And second, I would like to thank you all for the nice words. I didn't know the lead staff was here, so I must be very careful not taking it. The reason being that I met Francesco Rosi actually in 1980, which means 35 years ago or so. I asked him to become his assistant director in Three Brothers, and he said no. But for some reason, we made friends. And then 15 years later, maybe 17 years later, Criterion Collection asked me to interview him. They were preparing, maybe 20 years later, they were preparing Salvatore Giuliano and Hands Over the City. And after a while, they decided to do also a Momento della Verità, the Moment of Truth. So I went visiting his beautiful house in Via Gregoriana, and I spent a few weeks interviewing him. And the first thing that I noticed is that he was happy in particular about Moment of Truth, which was quite surprising. The reason being that despite what the American critics wrote at the time, in 2001 or 2, both Mani sulla città and Salvatore Giuliano were rightfully considered masterpieces, while the Momento della Verità was almost forgotten. And as any parent, he was very keen and fond of his lesser children. So he was pushing for that film. He even showed me a clip, maybe Gary doesn't know it, of a newspaper, I don't know which American newspaper, that used as a title The Moment of the Truth for a film critic called. I don't know if this actually came from Francesco's title, but he was very, very proud of it. I want to say a few things because I noticed what Roberto Saviano said before. I'm not completely convinced that the genes of Francesco Rosi's work are in the series, in the TV series. It's possible, I never thought about it. But certainly, there is something different and also equally interesting. As you know, one of the films that we, meaning Italians, will present in Cannes in a few weeks, which is Matteo Garrone, Il Punto dei Punti, The Tale of Tales. Actually, the first one who made a film out of Punto dei Punti was Francesco Rosi. C'era una volta, once upon a time, I don't know the American title, the one that you mentioned with the Marshall Reef and Sofia Loren. Not a completely successful film, but a very interesting experiment. The second thing I want to say, I was very surprised that important critics, among them Andrew Saris, whom I like a lot, used the word Marxist, because it was completely wrong. You can accuse someone to be Marxist if he or she is Marxist. He was not. He was a leftist, he was a socialist. I wouldn't call him a Marxist at all. It was very superficial. His judgment also on Pauline Kael's and other Julie Priest and very...
It's a way of avoiding everything.
Actually, what is interesting in Francesco Rosi, in his best film, including the Manifesto, for example, although he has a strong opinion, a strong point of view, clearly a leftist point of view, he's never a slave of ideology. Let me give an example. If you remember Le Mani sulla città, which in my personal opinion is even better than Salvatore Giuliano, there is the main character who is clearly a corrupted evil character played by the great American actor Rod Steiger. By the way, he was among the first Italian directors to cast international stars, once here, but Rod Steiger in a particular case. And that character, who is the bad guy of the film, is much more charismatic, much more intelligent, much more fascinating than the good guy, which is not what a man who is obviously slave of ideology does, not at all. You have a very interesting, controversial, even ambiguous approach. Again, he's a criminal, he makes wrong things, bad things, but again, still very charismatic, very intelligent, and fascinating. This was very courageous at the time. If you see instead of the consigliere comunale, don't ask me how to say consigliere comunale, the city council, played by the real city councilor, Mr. Fermaniello, I think that's the name. Don't tell me that that gentleman is charismatic and fascinating. He is noble, he is honest, not charismatic at all. So this was his approach when he was at his best. He had his ideas, he was a leftist, he was a courageous, passionate man, even tough at moments. He told me once something very, very scary. And now I can go to a personal anecdote. And this is actually the interview that I made for the Criterion Collection. There is an extraordinary moment in Salvatore Giuliano where he see, I think at the beginning of the film, Salvatore Giuliano's mother, who cries over the corpse, over the body, dead body of Giuliano himself. It's a wonderful moment. It's the strength of the moment is in the word of Eisenstein. It's so pure, it's so moving. And I asked him, how did you get that performance? And he told me that that woman had her son assassinated by mafia. So in a sense it was very emotional for her that she was remembering what really happened to him. Was this cruel? Was this tough? He was looking for artistic truth in that moment. I'm saying this to underline also his directorial style and also his toughness in his artistic choices. The other thing I want to mention is why American filmmakers embrace him immediately, great American filmmakers. Let me give you a few names: Martin Scorsese, Steven Dallas, Cine Lumet. I was present when I brought Cine Lumet to Rome, one of my encounters, and Francesco wanted to be with us, and then we stayed all night long, and I remember how Lumet admired him. I believe that Lumet and Scorsese are, of course, very different filmmakers. They recognized in Francesco Rosi the craft. Because what is great, and I think in this I totally agree with Roberto Saviano, he's not a documentarist, he's not a journalist, he's a true filmmaker. His language is more important than his ideas. You can see his art through his craft. He's like a private who became a general. He learned his craft from the very low. And this is something that a great American filmmaker who works within the industry understanding. Very few Italian filmmakers know his work as Rosi. We have geniuses, of course, like Fellini and a few others, but very few filmmakers. The other name that comes to mind is Pietro Gero, another man who knew everything, all the tricks. Francesco Rosi knew everything, and Scorsese, Lumet, and of course many others immediately recognized his talent. And when I say that it was like a general tour, the time he started as a private, don't forget, it was mentioned before that he started as assistant in La Terra Trema, in Visconti. Then he did also Senso, and he did also other films. By the way, in Senso, the other assistant also in La Terra Trema was Francesco Zeffirelli.
Yes.
Very different, very, very different filmmakers. Finally, another key element is the word investigation, indagine. He was interested in understanding the truth. I'm not saying that he always understood what really happened, but this is, I think it's a plus, not a minus. Because what is important in a filmmaker is important in a true artist, not giving answers, but posing questions. And he posed questions all through his career, especially his best film, together with his masterpieces, Le mani sulla città, and Salvatore Giuliano, he certainly did in Caso Mattei, which is a beautiful, beautiful film. Or Cristo si è fermato a Eboli, people di Movi Eboli, and I realized that after the fourth time, which we will mention, cried stopping Eboli. And Three Brothers, just to mention another, or in Cadaveri Eccellenti, based on a book by Leonardo Sciascia. So although he was always trying to understand the truth, what was more important for him was the important giving answer, which I think made it different from an ideological approach. That's it. I don't want to be too long. I also want to add that not ever forget what is great about his craft. Because although he was looking for the truth, always the moment of truth, because his style, sometimes with tough methods, like the one that I mentioned, what was important is the language. The language is always powerful and pure. This is